One of the things that the libraries in the United States and the press in the United States do really well for our community is provide support to our First Amendment right of freedom of speech, which connects to freedom to read and freedom to learn information that is not a freedom guaranteed in many countries. And so the Eugene Public Library, like libraries across our nation, is a source for getting diverse opinions about controversial topics. It's a place to perhaps get alternative medicine if you're not, or second opinions if you're not satisfied with the information you're getting from, your one source, or be it an old wives' tale or whatever. It is really a crucial component to our democracy and our way of thinking about human rights, and the right to access to information is just core to making informed decisions, to understanding what's going on in your world, and to underpin the respectful interrelations between peoples and cross cultures, which without that knowledge and understanding can sometimes really end up at cross purposes. So I'm really proud of the library's part that we play in underpinning that crucial human right. One of the big projects that we did a few years ago was working with homeless service providers in the community to make sure that even our most vulnerable citizens, people that are currently living without homes, would still be able to get a Eugene Library card. Since our card is based on residence in the city, we worked with our homeless service provider partners to identify Eugene residents even though they were homeless. And those that go through that process have their own library card and access to everything in exactly the same conditions and rules as everybody else. So it's been a great program for getting access for everybody. They've found that if up until 3rd grade, kids are learning to read. From 3rd grade on, you read to learn. And if you don't have reading skills developed at 3rd grade level, that's one of the strongest indicators that you will likely have real challenges in life, perhaps be incarcerated. I mean, they can use reading levels at 3rd grade to predict how many jail beds they'll need 20 years later. And so we feel we have an incredible mission to help the kids of Eugene avoid that alternative fate.
The Human Rights Commission, besides encouraging city government to implement human rights here at the local level, is also very excited about the ways in which various community groups are framing the work that they're doing in human rights terms. For example, the Oregon Toxics Alliance, which is based here in Eugene, uses a human rights framework to address environmental threats and the threats to life and health that people experience when the environment isn't attended to. Amigos Multicultural Services Center, which is an immigrant rights organization, frames immigrant rights as human rights and pursues immigration reform and other ways to protect people who are in the community who come from other countries in human rights terms. We also have, based in Eugene, a group called Mind Freedom International, which advocates for the rights of survivors of the mental health system. And they directly use a human rights framework in talking about the rights of the people that they advocate for. And a final example is the Springfield Alliance for Equality and Respect, which is part of a large organization called Community Alliance of Lane County. This is a group that works primarily in Springfield, our neighbor city across the river, but homelessness, which is the focus of much of the Springfield Alliance's work, doesn't know boundaries, and the Springfield group works closely with groups here in Eugene that are addressing the issue of homelessness. Again, this is all being done from a human rights perspective. So what we're seeing in the community is the growth of interest in using human rights and using human rights as a framework to talk about problems as varied as environmental threats, homelessness, immigrant rights, and treatment of mental health.
By bringing the human rights framework into the picture through the environmental justice lens, it provides a space to address concerns, to voice opinions, to empower the community, and that is one of the factors and essential elements towards contributing to the success of this project. And for example, we had a community forum where the residents and community leaders and officials were able to gather and express opinions and concerns regarding air pollution in West Eugene. And out of that, we're hoping to establish a community advisory committee. And without the human rights and the environmental justice perspective, that space would probably not have been as effective.
My name is Yesenia Sanchez, and I'm a board member of the Amigos Multicultural Services Center. It's a immigrants' rights organization here locally, and I'm also a member of MECHA, which is a Latino Chicano student union here at the University of Oregon. If I were in a classroom with a group of high schoolers and was trying to wake them up to the world in a way, I would want them to start seeing all the discrimination that is around them. Maybe not necessarily within their high school classroom, but the fact that we still use a system close to slavery to get this country going. The agricultural industry and the farm workers, the low wages that they get paid. Maybe their local county jail is now being used as a mini deportation center. Racial profiling the police might do, even to them actually, because even more so because they're youth. Well, what I've been seeing here in Oregon is it's almost like this fear that a lot of our immigrant communities have, especially with being denied, basic services such as being able to drive legally, so the driver's licenses, and also what happened in a couple of our communities up in Northern Oregon, so trying to give higher penalties to employers of undocumented people, and all these different measures that they wanted to pass, so to essentially kick out folks from their home. It's like this atmosphere of fear that people don't feel like they can be themselves. I know somebody told me a story of going to the grocery store and talking in Spanish, and one of their family members, and having somebody else coming up to them and telling them that the typical "this is America," speak English, and feeling like you can't even speak your own language, like you have to be afraid of going out because you don't have a driver's license. Things like that is what I see as human rights violations. You just the ability to have feel like you're at home.
Well, at Mind Freedom International, human rights has become the centerpiece, the framework that we can approach a lot of problems in mental health. People who've been through the mental health system are among the most marginalized of all populations. In a lot of studies, people diagnosed with psychiatric disabilities are often some of the poorest people. Their lifespans in the public mental health system are 25 years less than the average person. They can experience things like involuntary electroshock. We had a campaign last year about a guy, Ray Sanford, that was actually getting court-ordered involuntary electroshock on an outpatient basis. They woke him up every Wednesday and brought him to a forced electroshock, running electricity through his head, on a weekly, ongoing basis. That's how bad it can get, right? Even right here in the USA. So you have this huge range of problems. In fact, I ask audiences that I speak with, I say, you've heard of racism, sexism, maybe even ableism or ageism. Have you heard of saneism? And a lot of people have never even heard of it, where we think of people with severe mental and emotional problems as if they're even not really human, that they're genetically and chemically different from us, that we can't understand them, that they're dangerous. So there's such a huge array of problems that the human rights framework has really helped us connect with people and society. The big breakthrough this past few years is that the United Nations passed a new treaty. They call it a convention. It's a binding treaty called the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, the CRPD. And our team in the UN actually was part of crafting this treaty, along with a number of other mental health consumers, psychiatric survivors, and hundreds of people from the cross-disability movement. This has given us a tool to bring up issues such as forced treatment and guardianship, and that our disability alone should not be enough. Our disability should not be a reason to take away our rights. We had some breakthroughs. One thing is the City of Eugene City Council unanimously adopted our resolution. And our resolution says that choice in mental health care is a human right, that there ought to be more choices available to citizens other than just the pharmaceutical approach.
Well, the organization that I've been involved with for a long time is Community Alliance of Lane County, CALC, and CALC tackles a whole range of human rights issues. The part of that work that I particularly do is work with Springfield Alliance for Equality and Respect, and as part of that I coordinate a wonderful group in Springfield called the Springfield Shelter Rights Alliance, and you'll hear the word rights right in the name of the group, and that was not the least bit accidental. It's because that's a point of agreement among everybody in the group that shelter is a human right. It may not be a human right which is realized for people, but it is their right. And it's their right because they're human beings that were born on the planet. And it's a different thing to know that your rights are not being realized, but that you have them. That has a lot to say about human dignity and about people's sense of who they are. And so we think it's very important to have that as the starting point. And then of course we try to do some very practical work to make the situation better for people who are homeless or people who are at risk of homelessness. Human rights are about human dignity, and it's about the fact that in my worldview is we're a family. We're all of us as human beings a family. And I'm personally offended and angry when other people don't have the basic things that they ought to have, that we all ought to be able to take for granted just because we're people on the planet. And I want that. I want those human rights, and I want that respect, and I want that dignity for everyone else that's alive.
And I should let you know that the work that you all are doing here, I'll discuss this a little bit more later on, but the work that you're doing here is becoming nationally and internationally recognized, and Eugene's really becoming a model for how local community can implement human rights really where the rubber meets the road.